You hear "man overboard, starboard side," and everything changes. The bridge announces it shipwide over the 1MC. The ship banks hard into a turn. A watchstander runs to the rail and throws a smoke float, a life ring, and a lighted pole into the water. One spotter locks eyes on the sailor and never looks away. Another grabs binoculars. The officer of the deck is already calling the bearing, the time, and the maneuver. That's how the Navy rescues sailors who fall overboard at sea, and every second of it is drilled, timed, and designed to fight the real killers: cold shock, exhaustion, and losing sight of a human head in open ocean. Here's what most people don't realize. Sharks aren't the threat. Big waves aren't the threat. The threat is a 1-degree drop in water temperature, stealing your ability to control your breathing. It's the first 60 seconds of cold shock that can drown you before you even start to swim. It's wind and current pulling you 100 meters off course in 5 minutes. It's night turning a person into a dark speck against dark water that you'll never see again. The Navy's man overboard playbook exists because in open water, small mistakes compound fast, and minutes decide whether you come back aboard or disappear into the drift. So the moment someone goes over the side, the ship snaps into a sequence that's been rehearsed hundreds of times. The officer of the deck immediately orders a hard turn, usually to the side the sailor fell from, to avoid running them over and to begin the track back. The helmsman executes. The Combat Information Center logs the exact time, the ship's position, course, speed, wind direction, sea state, and current. That data isn't just paperwork. It feeds the drift calculation. It tells the rescue team where the sailor will be in 10 minutes, not where they were at the splash. On deck, teams throw markers fast. A smoke float that burns orange for visibility. A self-igniting light that works day or night. A life ring in case the sailor can grab it. Some ships carry a man overboard pole, a tall weighted float with a flag and strobe on top that stays upright in the swell and gives the spotter a bigger target to track. The goal is simple: create a visible reference point in the water so that even when the person disappears between waves, you still have something to aim at. The spotter's job is the hardest. Stand at the rail, point at the sailor, don't blink, don't look away, don't assume someone else has eyes on target, because the second you lose visual contact in 3-foot seas, that sailor becomes a needle in a moving haystack. The truth is, a human head is maybe 10 inches across. In moderate chop, it vanishes and reappears every few seconds. At a quarter mile, it's almost invisible without binoculars. At a half mile in failing light, it's gone. While the spotter holds the line of sight, the rest of the machine spins up. The boat crew musters, usually a rigid hull inflatable boat team trained specifically for man overboard recovery. If the ship is a carrier or has a helicopter detachment, the helo scrambles. On carriers during flight operations, there's often a plane guard helo already airborne or on 5-minute alert for exactly this scenario. Medical personnel stand by with hypothermia kits, blankets, monitoring gear, and oxygen. The rescue swimmer checks his harness and preps to enter the water if needed. The reality is this: you're not searching an entire ocean. You're containing a small drifting box of water and putting every available asset inside it before the sailor drifts out or time runs out. The ship's turn keeps the person astern and ideally downwind, so you don't lose them under your bow. The markers expand your visual footprint. The GPS waypoint anchors your math when eyes fail. The boat or helo gives you the speed to close distance faster than hypothermia can shut down muscle control. That's the chain. Alarm, mark, turn, track, launch, recover, treat. It's not cinematic, it's mechanical, and it works because the Navy treats every man overboard like a ticking clock, and the clock started the second they hit the water. The turn isn't random. The officer of the deck chooses from 3 maneuvers, and the choice depends on how much information they have and how fast they need to get back. If the watchstander saw the exact moment of the splash and called it immediately, the ship executes an Anderson turn, sometimes called a quick turn. Hard rudder toward the side the sailor fell from, usually about 70 degrees, then steady on a reciprocal course that brings you back along your wake. It's the fastest return, and it works when you know exactly where they went in. If the fall wasn't seen right away, maybe someone notices a sailor is missing and sounds the alarm. A minute or two later, the officer of the deck calls for a Williamson turn. Full rudder to one side until the ship swings 60 degrees off the original heading, then full opposite rudder to bring the bow around until you're on the exact reciprocal of your original track. The Williamson puts you back on your previous path, even if you don't have a precise splash point, because you retrace the wake and pick up markers or the sailor somewhere along that line. And if the ship has gone well past the point of the fall, maybe because of delayed reporting or confusion about which side, the Charnow turn tightens the geometry. It's a hard turn of about 240 degrees that lines you up on your reciprocal course faster than a Williamson, but it sacrifices sacrifices some track precision. The truth is, all three maneuvers exist for one reason: get the ship back to the sailor without losing time, without running them over, and without drifting so far off that your search box explodes in size. While the ship is turning, the Combat Information Center is building the track. They plot the drop point on the chart. They factor in the ship's original speed and heading, the wind speed and direction, the sea state, and the known or estimated current. Ocean current alone can move a person half a knot or more. Wind pushes a swimmer even faster, especially if they're trying to stay afloat and presenting surface area. In 5 minutes, that's hundreds of meters of drift. In 15 minutes, it's half a nautical mile or more. What most people don't realize is that the search isn't static. It's a moving target, and the track has to move with it. So the Combat Center updates the drift estimate every few minutes and feeds it to the bridge, the boat crew, and the helicopter if one is launched. The goal is to shrink the uncertainty. You started with a point. Now you have a vector, a line of probable drift. The longer it takes to launch the rescue, the longer that line gets, and the wider the search cone becomes. Meanwhile, deck teams keep dropping markers. If the first smoke float drifts out of sight, they throw another. If the wind shifts or the sea picks up, they add die marker or another strobe. The spotter is still pointing, still calling out position relative to the ship, and the bridge is relaying that to everyone in the chain. The boat crew is staged and ready to launch as soon as the ship slows enough or comes to the right course to put the boat in the water safely. If a helicopter is inbound, the flight deck is clearing and the aircrew is getting the last known position over the radio. Every piece of the response is designed to do one thing: keep the sailor inside the box and shrink the time before someone puts hands on them. Here's where it gets critical. If the spotter loses visual contact, if the sailor drops behind a swell, if dusk turns to dark, if rain or spray cuts visibility, the entire response shifts from direct tracking to search patterns. And the reality is, once you lose eyes on a person in open ocean, every second without a structured search plan multiplies the area you have to cover. The Navy doesn't guess. They switch to geometry. The first pattern is the expanding square. You start at the last known position, the GPS mark, the final visual bearing, the spot where the marker was dropped, and you search outward in a square spiral. Each leg gets longer: 1 unit north, 1 unit east, 2 units south, 2 units west, 3 units north, and so on. The helicopter flies it from above with infrared and visual scanning. The boat runs it on the surface with crew scanning the water and calling out anything that breaks the pattern of waves. The expanding square works when your starting point is solid, but you don't know which direction the drift took the sailor. It covers the most likely area fast without leaving gaps. If the last known position is extremely precise, maybe the sailor fell during a man overboard drill or someone marked it immediately with a GPS beacon, the search team uses a sector search. They divide the area around that point into pie slices and sweep each sector methodically, usually starting downwind because that's where drift is strongest. It's slower than an expanding square, but it's exhaustive. Nothing inside the search radius gets missed. And if the uncertainty isn't a point, but a line, maybe the fall happened somewhere along a 5-minute window of the ship's track and no one knows exactly when, the search becomes a creeping line. The helo or boat runs parallel, passes along the estimated drift corridor, each pass offset by the width of effective visual range, usually a few hundred meters depending on conditions. It's a lawnmower pattern. It takes longer, but it's built for elongated uncertainty, and it prevents the search from collapsing into random back and forth that wastes fuel and time. What most people don't realize is that all three patterns are designed around one assumption: the sailor is drifting, and your search has to drift with them. So the Combat Information Center continuously updates the center point of the search based on wind, current, and time since the fall. A search that starts a quarter mile east of the splash point might need to shift another 200 meters east 10 minutes later. The search pattern moves, the data moves, and if the helicopter or boat isn't updating their base leg to match, they're searching empty water while the sailor drifts out of range. The helicopter has the advantage of speed and sensors. Thermal imaging can pick up body heat against cold water. Even at night, the searchlight can flood hundreds of meters of surface, but the boat has the advantage of proximity. The crew can hear a whistle, see a small strobe or chem light that a helo might miss from altitude, and get hands-on fast once they make contact. So often, both assets work the same search zone from different altitudes and angles, layering coverage to cut the miss rate. The goal is simple: find fast, because the window for a live recovery is closing with every minute the sailor stays in the water. The moment the helicopter or boat gets eyes on the sailor, the recovery sequence starts. And the truth is, this is where training separates a save from a tragedy, because a person who's been in cold water for 10 or 15 minutes is exhausted, disoriented, and losing losing fine motor control. They can't climb. They can't grab a ladder. They need someone to do the work for them. If it's a helicopter recovery, the aircrew moves into position downwind of the sailor. The pilot holds a stable hover while the rescue swimmer preps at the door. The swimmer wears a harness connected to the hoist cable, a mask, fins, and usually carries a rescue strop or basket depending on the condition of the survivor. On the signal, the swimmer drops into the water near the sailor, not on top of them, and swims to make contact. The first thing the rescue swimmer does is establish control. They approach from behind or the side to avoid getting grabbed in panic. They talk to the sailor, keep them calm, and assess whether they're conscious, breathing normally, and able to follow instructions. If the sailor is alert, the swimmer fits them into a rescue strap, a padded loop that goes under the arms and around the chest. If the sailor is unconscious or unresponsive, the swimmer may use a rescue basket or switch to a direct body carry with the hoist hook clipped to both swimmer and survivor. Then the swimmer signals the hoist operator, and the cable pulls them both up together. The entire hoist takes less than a minute if conditions are good. Longer if the ship is rolling, the rotor wash is pushing them, or the sea state is heavy. If it's a boat recovery, the rigid hull inflatable approaches from the leeward side, the side sheltered from the wind, so the boat doesn't blow down on top of the sailor. The coxswain times the approach to the rhythm of the swell, pulling alongside on the crest when the sailor is highest in the water. The man overboard team leans over the inflated tube, grabs the sailor by the arms or the shoulders of their life vest if they're wearing one, and hauls them aboard in one coordinated pull. It's not gentle, it's fast, because every second the sailor stays in the water, they're losing body heat, and the risk of secondary drowning or cardiac event climbs. If neither the helo nor the boat can safely recover, maybe seas are too rough for the boat to launch, or weather has grounded the aircraft, the ship itself becomes the platform. Deck teams rig cargo nets over the side or deploy a pilot ladder. Some ships carry a Jason's cradle or a rescue seat that can be lowered on a line. The sailor is guided to the net or ladder, and the deck crew hauls them up by hand or winch. It's slower, it's harder, but it works when no other option does. Once the sailor is aboard, helo, boat, or ship, the clock shifts from rescue to medical. The recovery team moves them immediately to a sheltered space, out of wind and spray. Wet clothes come off. Dry insulation goes on. The medical team checks airway, breathing, circulation, and core temperature, because what most people don't realize is that the danger doesn't stop when you pull someone out of the water. It continues until their body stabilizes. The sailor is out of the water, but the mission isn't over. The next phase is just as critical, and it's where a successful rescue can still turn into a medical emergency if the team doesn't move fast. The reality is, pulling someone from cold water doesn't reverse what the cold has already done to their body. It just stops it from getting worse. And in the first few minutes after recovery, the risk of complications, cardiac arrest, pulmonary edema, shock is highest. So the medical team works a strict protocol. First, they assess the ABCs: airway, breathing, circulation. Is the sailor breathing on their own? Is their airway clear of water? Is their pulse strong or weak? If they're unconscious or barely responsive, oxygen goes on immediately. If they vomited seawater or inhaled spray during the fall, the team monitors for secondary drowning. Fluid building in the lungs hours after the event. It's quiet, it's invisible, and it can kill even after a sailor seems stable. Next, they address hypothermia. Wet clothing comes off carefully. You don't rip it or yank limbs, because rough handling can trigger a sudden drop in core temperature or an irregular heartbeat. Dry blankets go on. Insulated wraps. Heat packs near the core, chest, neck, groin, not the extremities, because warming arms and legs first can pull cold blood back to the heart and cause what's called afterdrop, a paradoxical core temperature crash that can stop the heart. The medical team monitors vitals continuously: core temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. If the sailor spent more than a few minutes in water below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, their body has been fighting cold shock, gasping, hyperventilating, losing muscle control. The first minute in cold water can trigger involuntary inhalation and drowning. The first 10 minutes can exhaust even a strong swimmer. After an hour, unconsciousness becomes likely. The Navy knows these windows, and the debrief later will map every minute against them to understand what worked and what delayed recovery. While medical handles the survivor, the Bridge and Combat Information Center begin the after-action review. They log the timeline: exact time of the alarm, time of the turn, time markers were deployed, time the boat or helo launched, time visual contact was regained or lost, time of recovery, and total time in the water. They document weather, sea state, visibility, and drift. They note what equipment worked. Did the smoke float stay lit? Did the GPS mark hold? Did comms between the ship and the boat stay clear? And what didn't? The boat or helo crew crew debriefs separately. Did the search pattern cover the drift corridor? Did the hoist go smoothly, or was there trouble with sea state or rotor wash? Did the rescue swimmer have the right gear for conditions? The goal isn't blame, it's compression. Find the seconds lost, fix the gaps, and cut time on the next event, because the truth is, there will always be a next event. Man overboard drills exist because falls happen. Rough seas, fatigue, slips on wet deck, medical episodes, and every real recovery refines the playbook. Once the debrief is complete, the ship resets. Deck teams repack the marker kits, new smoke floats, new flares, fresh batteries in the strobes. The boat gets refueled, the helo gets checked and rearmed if needed. Logs get updated. The crew goes back to watch, back to flight ops, back to mission, but the lessons stay. And here's what you need to understand. This entire system, the alarms, the turns, the markers, the patterns, the hoist, the hypothermia care, the debrief, exists because the Navy decided that no sailor gets left in the water if drills, discipline, and speed can prevent it. The ocean is unforgiving. Time is unforgiving. But a trained crew with a tested playbook can beat both, one rescue at a time. If this breakdown showed you something new about how the Navy operates under pressure, hit subscribe. We go deep on the systems, the tactics, and the truth behind naval operations. No fluff, just the real procedures that keep sailors alive.